So, success and setbacks. That's what this conversation is going to be about. About a year or so ago, I was asked to do a presentation, and I wanted to talk about something that you don't really hear a lot about, right? Generally, when you see investors on stage, whether they're in real estate or in business, it's all the highlights, right? It's all the great things, it's all the good stuff, all the money that they've made, all the, and we know that's just not how life works, right? It's not all good all the time. And I don't think it's actually fair to those who want to be involved in the business to only expect things to be good all the time. It's going to set you up for failure. So I decided to look back at my career and pull out some lessons, good and bad, and what I learned from it, and share them with folks. And hopefully, you all get a feel for what it's like to be a full-time investor. And with that being said, how many folks here are full-time investors? Okay, we got a good amount. How many people here would like to be a full-time investor? Great. Okay, good. So I think you'll get a lot of value out of this because I think that I represent sort of like Joe everybody, right? I was a union guy. I'm going to get into my story. And I was able to build a good size portfolio just through hard work. A lot of the things Bill said in the previous um, conversation that he mentioned, great, great, great ideas. All right. So what do we think about when we think about real estate investors? What do you normally see here? You normally think about people living in nice cars, making a lot of money, traveling. I didn't want to be like I want to be a little humble, so I just put somebody else's back on there. But somebody that's in good shape, right? You know. So going the wrong way. So that's what you didn't think about fast cars, lots of money. That's how it's presented, generally speaking, right? And we understand that that works, that attracts people. But there's also another side to being a full time investor. What is that? Right? It's lawsuits. Right? I've been sued many times. It's debt. It's shifting markets. There's just issues that come along with owning your own business, whether it's real estate or any business, right? So it's not all good all the time. So I want to talk about a little bit about my road to becoming a full-time investor. This picture is of me when I retired. Technically, I quit from SEPTA. So I went. I'm from Philly. I'm from Southwest Philly. For those of you who know Philly, I went to a school called Dobbins. Dobbins is a trade school. I was very fortunate between my junior and senior year. I got a co-op job at SEPTA, right? Which means I like went to school half the day, went to work at SEPTA half the day. After I graduated, I was hired at SEPTA full time, and so I was a union electrician for the railroad at 17. And so my mom was happy. I had that good job early. She was excited, which is what she really wanted. And so it really got me off started really, really well. So I was doing that, and then I also started a a promotion business. Started off small, like kind of like corner bar parties. Built that up to doing small stadium size events. So think like 10,000 seater stadiums. We were bringing artists. We would sell tickets, and that's actually how I thought I would become wealthy. That's what I thought would happen. That's not what it would happen, but that was the plan. And so I was young. I was in my early 20s. I had the job. I had this business, and I had a mother that is a real estate agent, but she's a mother, and she saw I was a young guy. I was making money. I wasn't married. I had any kids like that, and she didn't want me to do what a lot of young folks do when they make a little bit of money, which is what, blow it, right? Hanging out, partying, chasing women, doing whatever it is, right? And so my mom was like, "Why don't you buy real estate?" I had zero interest in buying real estate, but it's my mom, so I said, "Well, I'll go out and look, and I'll let her down later on, right? Make her feel like I'm listening." And what happened was during that process of me going out and looking at properties, I was like, you know what? This is actually not a bad third income stream, right? I had my job, I had the business, and I could have these rental properties as well. So what ended up happening was my first property was a bank-owned duplex that I purchased. I want to say like 2003 maybe, for $20,000. And my strategy at the time was very complex, very deep. I had $24,000 saved up, and it cost 20. I said, well, that works, right? And so that's what I did. So I bought this bank-owned property. I had zero rehab experience. I had zero real estate experience. So I did what I did best at that time. I was known as the overtime king at SEPTA. If overtime got to me, it was not getting by me. And so that's what I did. I worked a bunch of overtime. I did events, and I basically financed the whole rehab of this property out of my pocket. Right. And I put a lot of sweat equity into the deal. And to be honest, I hired a lot of jackleg guys because I didn't know good contractors at that time. So ultimately, it took me about a year and a half to get that project done. I got some tenants into that property, and I absolutely hated it. Because what I know now that I didn't know then is that being a landlord is a skill set, and is a skill set that I didn't have at that time. So I ended up getting at least the one pain in the butt tenant out, and I put the property on the market. I put it on the market on a Monday for 87.5. I got two full price offers by that Friday. And so I ended up selling that property about a month later. Went to settlement, got a check for $85,000, and I'm like, damn, this is more money than I made all year, right? And so it got the juices flowing, right? As to because up to that point, was raised to basically get a job and hold on to it and for dear life until I retire, right? So that was really one of the first moments where I realized I could make a substantial amount of money, and not have to necessarily. Well, I mean, I worked for it, but not like a job. And so, anyway, the next property that I purchased was a bank-owned. Um, I'm sorry, not a bank-owned. It was a triplex that was being marketed as a single family. And shout out to moms again. My mom showed it to somebody else, realized it was a triplex, came back and told me. I was still living in Southwest Philly at the time. This property was in Delaware County. Ended up purchasing that property for I think 76.5. I did some sweat equity. Now what is known as house hacking. It didn't have a cool name back then. I lived in one unit. I rented the other two units. Made perfect sense, right? It covered all of my costs. Life was great. I met my wife. I moved out of there. The tenant that bought it after me, I mean, sorry, the tenant that rented my unit after me ended up purchasing that property for $180,000. And again, I was like, damn, I'm making money and I don't know what I'm doing. If I read some books, I might be dangerous. Right. So that's when I got serious about it. And I decided, thank you. I decided when I turned 30, by the time I'm 35, I'm going to retire. And so that's what I did. From that point forward, I just focused in on buying rentals, and I was able to retire. That this picture here is Christmas Eve of 2014, 3 days before my 35th birthday. So that was my last day at SEPTA, and so I've been a full-time investor for the last 10 years. So that's my road to full-time investing. All right. So in those 10 years, I've owned over 150 units. I've bought over $25 million worth of real estate. Generated close to $9 million in rental income, and rehab. This is 15 million, but it's much more than that. Rehab over $15 million worth of real estate. So I've done a lot of projects. I have a lot of experience in this industry, and it's been fun. So, full-time investor. I want to shift now into the full-time investing. When I started full-time investing, even when I decided I was going to retire, started off I was using my own personal money, which means I would take the cash that I did from deals, say I had $120,000, and I would buy properties in that range, right? Buy it for 30, 40,000, put 30, 40,000 into it. The property's worth 125, 130. I would refinance, you know, and I would do that over again. Probably bought my first 25, 30 properties doing that process, right? Super simple. Wasn't going to groups like this, and I didn't necessarily understand leverage. And then I learned about leverage, and I said, oh, okay, I could take that same 150,000 dollars, and I could utilize hard money, and I could split that up into 3, 4 deals, and instead of doing, one deal at a time, and that worked really well. And then I learned about private money and how to structure private money, and that just blew the walls up. That was a game changer beyond, because even when utilizing hard money, you're limited by how much debt you can service. Right? At some point, you can only service so much debt. Right? And so the good thing about private money, which I'm not going to get deep into, is that you can structure private money in very advantageous terms in which you don't necessarily have to service the debt during the construction of the property, right? You can structure it almost any way you can think of, as long as the other person is, that's ethical, of course, and legal, and the investor is okay with it. But that was a complete game changer. But at the time, I was wearing all the hats. So I was the guy who got the money. I was the project manager. I was going around to all the projects. I was still the property manager, which means I was answering phone calls from tenants, and I was underwriting all the deals. Right. So I was wearing all of these hats.
Can I have one?
You can have three of them. So because there's a reason why I'm mentioning all of these things. It's a lot of work, right? Um, and it works until it doesn't. All right. So once I started utilizing private money, I went from doing, say, with hard money, 3, 4 deals at a time, to private money doing 10, 12 deals at a time. Right. I mean, a complete just explosion of just doing a lot more. And I started to run into some problems. And I remember this vividly. I was out, and I got a phone call from a code official, and you would have thought like I messed this guy's mom house up. He's like, I'm walking through this property, and this place is messed up. What kind of work you guys doing? This place is horrible. Blah blah blah. I mean, he's like running me through it, right? And I'm like, okay, it definitely Delaware County, but it was definitely Delaware County. So kind of calmed the guy down. I said, well, listen, let me meet you at the site, and see what's going on. So that's what brings us to this property here. This is a triplex property. The I forget what township this in. It's in Ridley, but I can't think of exactly what small township it is. But anyway, so we walked through the property. Nah, it's on Amos land, whatever Amos land is. No, it's not Glen Olden. It's the other. I know that all those little towns kind of like run together. CK, nah, it might have been CK, but 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 anyway, so I'm walking through the property with him, and he's like, hey, this plumbing issues, HVAC issues, all these things are not done right, and he was not wrong. It was done. It was bad. Problem was, again, I'm wearing all these hats, so I was not necessarily paying attention to all the details, and the inspector wanted me to take everything out. And I kind of talked him off the ledge and said, well, can we do this? Can we do that? There are some things that we can do. So he actually agreed. Ultimately, I decided, you know what? I wasn't new, but I wanted to have a good name in the business. So we ended up taking everything out anyway. We ended up taking all the old plumbing out, all the old HVAC out, everything, and fixing it all up and getting it done right. But this particular deal, ended up losing $105,000 on, right? And there was that sucks, right? There's no way to make it sound like it's not. I'm not acting like it was a great time, but it was definitely a pivotal part of the advancement of my business, right? And here's some of the lessons that I learned from that. And this one is super important, is when you're going to lose, lose quickly. So this particular deal, once we got done, I put it on the market. I priced it so that it would sell quickly, right? I had private investors that I needed to pay back. I took the $105,000 hit, not my private investors. I want to make that clear. I took the hit. They got paid. They don't know whether I made money or lost money, which is really not their concern, right? Which is very important. If you want to start taking on private money, you have to have that sort of mindset, right? It's no crying to them, hey, this is not going good. That's not their problem. That's your problem. You took their money. It's your job to get them their principal back in their return. But what happened was, like I said, I decided to go ahead and price it so that it sold quickly. And we priced this, and this happens, but sometimes it's not real. Like the day we listed this, we got a phone call from one of the agents. It says, I have the perfect client for this, and they're going to want this property. And sometimes people say that, and they don't end up, closing. But they did. And we ended up selling this place within like 30 to 45 days from like the first day that we put it on the market. And here's why when you're going to lose, you want to lose quickly. There is a couple of reasons. Number one, there's just the mental bandwidth of carrying this issue, right? It's hard to move on when you have this thing hanging on your back. The other issue that you have is the longer you hang on to this loser, you can't get to a winner, right? And so I was able to pay back that private lender. They're super happy. They're ready to do what? Lend again, right? If I try to stay defiant, I'm gonna jack the price up $30,000, $40,000 to cover all the mistakes I made, and it stays out there for another year, right? It just creates more and more problems. So when you're going to lose, lose quickly. It sucks, but that's the best advice that I have for folks. And it's not just something I tell people, it's something that I actually live by. Exactly. There you go. That's the other way to say it. Just pull it off and just be done with it. And so what I decided to do was I understood that, okay, and now I have this private money coming in. There's all of these new opportunities that I have. I have to restructure this business. The other lesson from this is what got me to one level was not going to get me to the next. And that's true in life. So what got me to the level that I was previously was hard work, basically doing everything on my own. That wasn't going to get me to the next level. It just was not possible to do that. And so at every level of growth, you have to become like a new person, right? You have to shed the old you and become the new you, right? And that's just not some sort of woo woo, like metaphysical thing. It's a real mindset, right? And so one of the things that I had to learn to do, because my core personality is more controlling, right? I want to be a part of all of the little decisions. It's impossible though, right? You have to delegate those things, right? And then some things are not even really worth you doing. You're just accustomed to doing them, right? And that's what I was accustomed to, running around and going to Home Depot. I would go in there so many times. People thought I worked there, right? It was ridiculous. It's like, all right, this doesn't make any sense. And so what I did was, after I took this loss and finished up some properties, I basically shut down the business for 6 months and said, what does this business, or what do I have to look like, and what does this business have to look like for me to actually take advantage of these opportunities that I have? And that's when I came up with brand new structure, hired folks, and was able to actually execute on the opportunities. All right, strategy shift. So roughly up to about 2015, and how many investors were investing after 2008? Okay, so you'll understand what I'm about to say next. There was a glut of foreclosures, right? And so you could buy a property that really was not physically distressed, it was financially distressed, or the owners were. So they had to get rid of the houses, but the houses were in pretty good shape. They were not like full guts. It was mostly cosmetics, painting, maybe a little flooring. But you bought the property so cheaply from the bank that there was value there that you can then go get a loan and you can get your capital back, right? And I'd say that worked till about 2014 is when really a lot of investors came back into the market and banks wised up. They said we don't need to sell these properties for pennies on the dollar. We can actually sell them at at a market rate, right? And I had shifted from doing residential properties into multifamily and into commercial real estate. So a lot of the a lot of the lead sources that I had started to dry up. So I had two choices: either shift my strategy or stop investing. And I wasn't going to stop investing. And so I looked around in Philly and said, well, there's all these old properties that were not once multifamily properties. How did they become multifamily properties? Like, what was the process? What did people do? How did that work? And I stumbled onto a strategy that I call multifamily conversions. What that strategy is I identified advantageous zoning in Philadelphia that allowed you to to convert a property into a multifamily by right. And that's the most important part. By right, which means you skip the zoning process, you skip the variance process, is what the city allows you to do according to the zoning code. So that strategy shift, which was great because what happens is it gave me an advantage over other investors. So while they might go look at a property and they only see a single family property, I'm seeing a triplex, right? Where they see an old vacant warehouse, I see a 6 unit building, right? So we're not even analyzing the deal the same way. In fact, what it does is I could actually pay more, right? Because my strategy it has a greater value at the end and more income, right? And it gives me again more options. And so that that's the other lesson in this, right? Is to become an expert in a niche, right? I was really one of the few people at the time that was doing that, right? That was utilizing this multifamily conversion strategy. The other is you have to learn how to pivot in the market. Even right now, we're going through some market changes, and what happens is sometimes people become stuck on the strategy that worked for so long, right? This is what I do. This is my bread and butter. Well, it doesn't work anymore. Maybe the rates have changed. Maybe some rules have changed, right? And if you become too stuck doing things just one way, you're going because the market doesn't care about your feelings, doesn't care about what you like to do. That's not how it works. There's no emotion in it at all. It just is. And so you either pivot or you die. And so I decided to pivot. And again, I find this to be a very, very, it's probably one of the best strategies I've utilized that allowed me to grow my business at a really fast pace. I actually wrote a book. I have a course on multifamily conversions. Ah, COVID. So when I was making this presentation, I asked my assistant to find a picture that represented COVID. And the first pictures he sent me was like people just kind of wearing masks, looked like they were kind of like smiling and talking. I was like, that's not COVID. That's not what COVID felt like when it came out. Then she sent this. I said, that feels like COVID. I'm talking about the COVID at the beginning when it was all the uncertainty and all the fear and all the unknown and all that sort of stuff. But COVID was a challenge, right? It was it created a lot of issues. So you were not allowed to have. How many people were investing during COVID? How many of you feel like it's like trauma you push into the back of your brain somewhere? Does anybody feel like that, or is it just me? Maybe it's just me because I kind of forgot all the rules. You couldn't have active rehab sites, right? So you couldn't have people working on sites. There was a lot of fear amongst tenants. Like if you had tenants, I had tenants at the time. I mean, I still do, but And there was just a lot of fear going on, right? And you didn't know where things were going to go. And one of the things that had happened was there was a lot of lenders because the market reacts to these situations, right? So there was a lot of lenders who were pulling loans on investors, right? A lot of the DSCR lenders, which is basically kind of market-based lenders, were pulling loans left and right. I'm inside of a lot of groups. I mean, just every week, people were just, oh man, I had 4 or 5 loans, and now they've put a pause on all their loans, and I had a refinance that I was working on. It was actually one of the largest refis I had done at the time on a single property. Anyway, it was a multifamily conversion project. It was a 5 unit building that I converted into a 6 unit building that I bought off an investor who had got stuck in the deal. I think I bought it for 120. I might have put 120, 140 into it, and the price was 680. So there was a lot of equity there in that deal, and the cash out portion was like $240,000. And every day I was just looking for the email, Mr. Harvey, due to circumstances that are beyond our control, whatever. Right? I'm just looking for this email, looking for this email. Never came, and so we get to closing, and um, again, going back to COVID, this was the last day that you could meet inside of an office. You guys remember that? Again, pushing all this stuff out of our head. It was the last day you could meet in an office. And even then, I was like, we're going to get here and she going to pull something. I don't know what it's going to be. They're going to do something. They're going to do something to change this up on me. And so we get there, we sign all the documents, and then I'm finally comfortable enough to ask, like, hey, a lot of lenders were pulling their loans. What like what made you guys follow through? And let me back up. The lender I was dealing with was or is a portfolio lender. Portfolio lender meaning just they lend off their own balance sheet. So think like credit union, small local bank, something like that. They basically lend their own money. Where when you're dealing with a DSCR lenders, the person that originate the loan is not keeping it on their balance sheet, right? They're selling it off to like the securities market, Wall Street, whatever. It's getting packaged up and sold, right? That's why they're so concerned, because they're not doing there's not an underwriting is not based on you as the investor, is primarily on the property, right? It's the strength of the property. Where with a portfolio lender, a small bank, they first vet you. They vet your financial strength, and then they vet the property. And so that was the reason why they were comfortable. So one of the things that I encourage you, if you want to become a full time investor, I know there are a lot of and there's a lot of great loan products out there, but make sure you have a strong financial um, position, right? Statement, right? So when you fill out your PFS, you have options, because a lot of the other investors, unfortunately, they were not building their their financial model like in a strong way. It could only work if the loan was on the building and not on them personally. So I share this story just to say, hey, it has real consequences, right? And so in this situation, this I got this loan right as COVID hit full force. So it gave me some extra capital and cash that some of my other investor buddies did not get. All right. So the market shifted. So if we remember following the whole COVID thing through, everybody thought the market was going to drop. What happened? It went the other way, shot up. And I started my investing business buying single family properties in Delaware County. Think like Southeast Delco, um, like Fallcroft, Upper Darby, Sea King, like those areas there, right? those properties were great properties, but they never went up in value. Like hardly ever went up. And when COVID hit, I saw properties that I literally had a property I couldn't sell in Darby. I couldn't sell it. I tried. I'm not saying it like as some hypothetical. I tried to sell it before and could not sell it. And those properties shot up. And I put them on the market, and you would get agents going up there even before they got to the property. Hey, Mr. Harvey, I'm just letting you know we're going to be waiving inspections, appraisals, blah blah blah. I, as quickly as I could, I got the I got those tenants out, and because I knew there was no way that this was going to continue. Right? There was just no way. And so the lesson here is you have to strike while the iron is hot. While the opportunities are there, you have to take advantage of those opportunities. And so I did as quickly as I possibly could. I sold off a bunch of properties. So we're going to go into another setback. Again, 2022, 2023 were great years. 2023, I started to get an itch, and this is something that I shared just to be transparent. I had bought a bunch of rentals, I've done a bunch of flips, but I felt like I'm not a real investor unless I do a large development project. Somehow I got it in my head that now all the hundreds of units I already bought, the millions of dollars deal, I'm not a real investor unless I go ground up with some large apartment building. And I got it in my head. And so here we go. I bought this piece of property here, which was actually a good deal. It's not the deal that was bad. It's a good deal. This was still a buy right deal. Got it approved for 44 apartments. Um, I got the plans approved. I'm just out of curiosity. How much do you think plans cost on a 44 unit building? And just give me like three answers. How much do you think plans cost on a 44 unit building? Somebody's 20,000, 10,000. Yes, architectural, like all the drawings that you need to get approved. All right, you guys are not even close. I'm going to give you one more shot. $180,000 just on the plans. $180,000. That's just the plans. All right. So you got a guy? Should have got that guy back in the day, but yes, it is a lot. It's a lot that goes into these plans, right? And this is not just me throwing a number out there. I have the receipts. It's $180,000 to get these plans drawn up. You have to get water system. It's a whole thing. Get core drilling. It's a whole bunch there. So I'm saying that to say that this is capital that could have been going to other things. This process took almost 18 months just for the approval, right? So I'm holding this property, which is not making me any cash. Worse than that, I'm actually spending a ton of money on the plans. But I didn't just do one of these; I was doing multiples of these at the same time because I decided that I was not a real investor unless I was doing ground up. So what's the lesson here? I lost sight of the game plan. Right? I had a process and a plan and a strategy that worked, and for some reason, it wasn't because of the market. I decided to somewhat abandon it to do something else. Right? What they call it, like the shiny object syndrome, but that costs you hundreds of thousands of dollars. Right? And then we had some things that just happened that happens. Right? I had a glut of evictions, and I had a subsidy that we had. I don't know, they might have had 20, 25 units that they were renting, and I guess they didn't get funding, and so they cut off all their leases. So not only did I not get paid for those, I think 25 units, which is somewhere between $30,000 to $40,000 a month in no income, I now have to get these folks out, right? Because they have nowhere to go. So you got to work through and get those out. Then you have to fix those units up, right? And that's just how things happen, right? it when it like, when things happen, they happen all at once, right? And then rates went up. So um, this is the reality. So when I say like the good in the bad is yes, I had really good years. I mean excellent years, but also you have times that are very difficult and very trying. So the lesson with this is that the wins comes with the losses, but also and most importantly is that you're tougher than you think. I realize I'm tougher than I thought. Because if somebody had told me 10 years ago that this would happen, I'm like, man, I would just crumble and turn to dust, almost like in the Avengers. Thanos snapped his finger and you just turn into dust. It's like how can you survive that, right? But I did, and I not only survived, I thrived. I got through it, and I figured out how to do things better. All right. So, just quickly going over some of the lessons is when you're going to lose, lose quickly. Don't drag it out. Don't 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 wish on the rainbow or wish on a star. Have the ability to pivot. Markets change, opportunities change, all sorts of things change, right? So make sure that you have the ability to pivot. What gets you to one level is not what's going to get you to the next level. So you have to constantly be open to change, right, and growth. Strike while the iron is hot. When you have the opportunities, take those opportunities. They may not come back again or in those same fashion, and the wins come with the losses. So you have to expect that. You can't just expect it to be a sunny day every single day in real estate. It's just unrealistic. Right? Same thing with life or any business. Um, and that's it. That is success in setbacks. Any questions, comments? Uh, sure.
Thanks again for your presentation, Dan. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And I had a question about the bank-owned properties. I've been to some foreclosure sheriff sales, and I think it goes like when somebody doesn't buy the property, they go back to the bank.
Mhm.
I was always curious about how to find out about bank-owned properties. Like, I mean, is it through because I know you can find out through realtors, maybe through mom, but
Mhm.
how would somebody like me, maybe who doesn't
Sure.
know a realtor?
So there's a couple of things. Number one, you should know a realtor, and if you don't, you should make it your point to know somebody. Maybe somebody even in this room that that is. Secondly, look at that, and that's why you come to these kind of events, right? That's sometimes right there. But also, what I found is there's a lot of online um, goodness auctions, a lot of online auctions where they sell them. I'm blanking on their names, but I have a few saved. If you just Google bank owned auctions, you'll get a bunch of them. You have to sign up for them. Sometimes you have to put a small amount of money in there to like show show that you're serious. But yeah, but those options are there. I would recommend also. Yeah. Yeah. And I would also meet with wholesalers. A lot of those folks have access to people that are unfortunately losing their homes, so you can beat out it necessarily going to those websites, right? Yes, you could do that too. Now I've never tried that, but I hear they're very picky about who they talk to, and you know what I mean. So all depending on your, I don't know what your life is like, right? Some of the stuff you have to delegate, right? If you can find an agent that has the leads, you can find a wholesaler that has the leads, then you can focus on finding the capital, right? You can't necessarily do everything all the time. So you may have to like pick your spots. I'm not saying don't do it, but just figure out like what you're best at.
I believe you can talk to the bank, send them an email. They will send you a list of the properties they have,
Okay.
and from there you can start pursuing it and
Mhm.
getting what you need, and
Mhm.
you can go for it.
Yeah, and then you have to think about this too. Are you the kind of person who wants to knock on the door of somebody who is losing their house and have that conversation? yeah, some people not built. I'm not really built like that. I don't want to have that conversation. So I'm not discouraging anybody, but I'm just saying be real with yourself to say, hey, do you want to? Are you that person to have that conversation? Go ahead.
When you were speaking about by right, specifically, they'd have to be zoned in that district, converted from a single family to a.
So okay, so I'll speak directly to Philadelphia, but this works everywhere, roughly the same way. So the zoning is for the city, right? And so whatever that zoning is, it tells you. So you have two parts of zoning. One is the zoning, and one is use. Zoning tells you what the property could potentially be. So let's say the zoning is CMX2. That is a commercial mixed use zoning. It could be a commercial mixed use building. It could be a purely residential building. Could be. The use is it is a this kind of commercial and these many apartments, right? So as long as it has the correct zoning, and then there are qualifiers. Um, at least in Philadelphia, which for all of the issues I have with Philly, they do have some of the cleanest zoning, right? Because it tells you exactly what you can do. So it might be qualifiers with size of the lot. It might be qualifiers with maybe parking, but the qualifiers are there. They tell you up front. So as long as you read all of that information, or again, I have it all packaged up. You can get it there too, but it's all there. Mhm.
Do you go right to the township to find out what the zoning is, or
So most cities are have it on a website somewhere. Should have it on a website. But what I found too is, especially for like, so I'm going to take Philly out of it. I would just call the zoning person and ask them questions. Like in smaller townships, they will normally pick up the phone. You can never do that in Philly, but in the smaller townships, somebody's generally there to pick up the phone. But I would start on the website first, so you at least have most of the information, and then you can kind of narrow it down from that point. Anything
Anybody
else?
have so many other questions for him? I gotta tell you, what I loved about your presentation?
What's that?
The fact that
What?
you
What?
talked
There's no
about.
black people in there. Then I'll just mess. See,
See, I was gonna stay away from that, but now if you want to go there, right? If you want to go
I'm
there,
just messing with you,
if you want
Larry.
to go there, I'll tell you. So the fact that you talked about the problems you had, right?
Mhm.
So you guys know, like when we talk about stuff, we tell you the problems we have. We also tell you the great stuff that happens, right? We tell you when we lose money, when we make money. This is the sign of somebody who's real. You ever notice that this guy, the guys on YouTube, oh, let me tell you how much money I made, blah, blah, blah. And they never tell you how much money they lost,
Yeah.
right? And I hate that, right? It's not real. When you sit here and you talk about the bad ones and the good ones, and you mix them up and you tell the stories of the bad ones and why it happened, right? Sometimes you just make a mistake, right? Other times you get a little overzealous, and other times you fall in love with the property,
Yeah.
which is a big problem. You never fall in love with the property, you always fall in love with the deal. And sure enough, there was even one that Armory suggested that I walk away from. And right now, I'm just trying to sell it. I'm trying to get whatever I can out of it. So I know exactly what you're talking about. So this is real. Dan is real. And how can you help these guys? Is there something you can help them with in zoning or anything?
Well, sure. I mean, there's a couple ways. I have a construction company now. So if any of you guys have
Do you hire white
projects,
people?
what's that?
You hire white people?
Rarely. I try to keep it even.
Or do you hire just the Spanish people who come over the border illegally?
Look at this guy. See what I'm saying? This is Larry. But also, I do consultations. I know Larry covers a lot of the townships. But if you're interested in learning about multifamily conversions, understanding the process, especially in Philly, like I am an expert. Like I don't just throw that word around. I've done a lot of these from single to like residential and single to commercial. So 5+ units. So really understand that process.
Yeah, we had a student who had an issue with a 2-3 family, wasn't sure what it was, and Dan helped them out a little bit too. So yeah, these are things that it's great to know these people get like Dan and Glenn. I mean, I don't know who Glenn is, but we have people who can help you, people who are connected, people who can make the right phone call and get things done a lot quicker than you could try to figure it out by yourself.
Yeah.
Dan's definitely one of them.
That's the slowest way to do things. And I mean, listen, I'm not saying don't look things up, but why reinvent the wheel? All right, it just doesn't make sense.
Are you looking to acquire any more properties? Because we have some commercial stuff going through our brokerage ready to convert.
In Philly?
Yes.
So I'm not so aggressive on Philly anymore. I would also. I'm just. Yeah, that's a whole different presentation. We don't have time for that because I walked y'all through Philly, but that's a different. But I'm always open, so I never say no. Right? If it makes sense, I definitely. I'm still buying. If that's the answer. Yes. I think that's the question right now.
Yeah, there's two places in the world to invest. One is Philadelphia, the other is everywhere else. I
Yeah.
choose everywhere else.
Yeah, a lot of people do. There's a question back there. Oh.
Dan, you had just mentioned about you do consulting.
Yes.
As a new, if somebody was crazy enough to invest in Philly
Mhm.
and buy and wants to start buy rental property, would you consult them on all the where to start for like zoning and also which license they need and like the whole thing to get started?
Mhm.
Because there is a lot of red tape to go through.
So
Become a landlord.
So one thing I do want to say, I think there is still opportunity in Philly. It is a very regulatory city, so it's big on compliance. And so yes, that's something I specialize in because in my business, everything runs off of processes, right? So we have a process for everything, every step of the way when it comes to all the permits, when it comes to your tenants, all the documents that you need, everything that you need if you want to go from a single to a multi-family, every single step we have down. So we take the guesswork out of it, right? So absolutely, that's something that I can help with.
So you have a system.
There you go, system. Yeah, absolutely. On every single step. But I'm sure Larry talks about this all. You have to have a system. If you don't, you got to figure you're recreating, you're doing it over again every single time, which is imagine how much brain power you're wasting, right? Okay, how did I screen that tenant? What did I ask them last time? What did I put into the lease? You should have a checklist for every part of your business, right? That's why all big businesses have checklists. Not because people can't think, it's just minimizes those mistakes that makes it simplifies things and you don't have to spend so much brain power on little things.
Yeah.
Time and then after that, it's not a
It's
mistake no more.
you should see my lease. It's like 150 pages. It looks like a mortgage.
Wow. Wow.
I think my time's
All right,
up,
cool. All
man.
right. One more question for Dan. Anybody got something? All right, cool.